Hey everybody, this show is brought to you by Cowboy Revolution Apparel. Use code VALIDSTUDIOS to get 15% off anything site-wide. I personally love their hats, but they have other things. They have t-shirts, some hoodies, different stuff like that. But it'll help us support the show. We get a little kickback from it, and we hope you'll enjoy their super high-quality stuff. It looks great. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right. Shane Cohen, welcome to the Ben Jam and A Show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Super excited to be on the show.
Yeah, so I've been a fan of you for a while, kind of really since you won that NCAA championship. That was really when I started following you. I think your name really got out there the most. But I run collegiately. I'm an 800 guy myself, and that was something that, especially, I go to a Division II school. I think you gave a lot of people hope that maybe didn't get to go to the big, I guess it's Power 4 now, programs that, they could go do something similar to what you did.
Yeah, no, it's definitely such a story, going from Division Two, just like you, and then, getting the chance to have the COVID year and then transfer to Virginia and kind of see how everything really took off, just being with a new program, new coaching staff, being surrounded by a lot of great athletes, and end up not even being able to win Division Two nationals, so then going on to somehow win Division One national. Quite a good experience.
Yeah. Well, here on the show, everybody starts with an introduction for anybody listening that doesn't know who you are, even though most of the people in the running community that are going to listen to this are probably going to know. But we have kind of a wide expanse of topics that we cover. So quick introduction. Shane Cohen grew up in Pennsylvania, attended Division II University of Tampa in Florida for your undergrad before transferring to the University of Virginia. You just wrapped up your second year as a pro at Nike. You hold a personal best. Is this still your personal best, the 146.48?
144.65.
It's 144.65 now?
Yeah.
When did you run that one?
So I ran 144.65 at the Olympic trials final in 2024.
Last year?
And then I also tied the personal best this year when I was doing a few races in Europe. Tied it to the 10th of a second.
Dude, that's brutal. Moving on, we have you're an ACC indoor champion in the DMR, first team all ACC indoors and outdoors. As we mentioned before, 2024 800-meter NCAA champion, going last first in the final 150, best known for your kick. And then, as you mentioned, U.S. Olympic trials, sixth-place finisher in 2024 with that PR 144. So, laundry list of accomplishments. Is there anyone that's particularly your favorite?
Honestly, I will say, I think it's really weird when I say this, but I really do think the ACC indoor DMR really always stands out to me. I just think that was like my first glimpse of being on a true team that like is competing for like not only myself but like with three other guys. At Tampa, we never had indoor, so it was my first time running indoor, and like obviously I know how much conference means to the team and everything, and just being able to go and win an ACC title, obviously in one of the hardest conferences in the country, really stands out to me a lot. And I just think from there I had a lot of confidence that things were working out. We're surrounded by a lot of good guys, and that kind of built on to outdoor and everything. But obviously, the individual championship, means the world to me. But I just think that ACC indoor title was like kind of that first glimpse of like really being on a team, and like because at Tampa we actually didn't have like a conference for track, so it was like I was pretty much just competing for myself, and like that was like the first glimpse of like it's kind of bigger than me, it's bigger than just the times, and I think that one definitely like really speaks volume for me for sure.
So take me through how you ended up at U Tampa, and then eventually what happened to allow you to make the jump to go to a school like Virginia.
Yeah, in high school I was a basketball player. That was like kind of my thing. I went to play college basketball, and I had a few Division III schools looking at me. I had a few schools looking at me for track, but it was funny because it was actually for my 400 time. That was pretty much my best time in high school. I ran a 49.2. So that was kind of like the big time I had. I only
Yeah.
ran 158 in high school. So I definitely was more of a 4.8 guy, and had a few schools looking at me, and then I kind of realized that I was gonna go try to go all in on basketball, not running. So I pretty much cut out all those running schools that were looking at me. Pretty much didn't apply to one school for running, and yeah, and then being from Pennsylvania, Philly spring training is always in Florida, Clearwater specifically. Um, my family was taking a trip for spring training, and they were like, "Oh, like why don't you go visit University of Tampa? It's 30 minutes away. It's you'll get a free trip to Florida." And I was like, "Oh, like, sounds good. Like not gonna say no to a free trip to Florida." And I went there, visited campus, and I was like, "Wow, like it's a beautiful campus, palm trees, pool in the middle of campus." And I was just like, you know what? Like it's 4 years of my life, kind of no regrets, kind of thing. And I ended up shortly after, I think that I figured that was kind of going to be the way I was going to go and just kind of enjoy school, enjoy and just kind of go through the academics and do that instead of pursuing a college sport, which was a really really tough decision. And from there, just kind of was like, oh, like I think I'm going to go to Tampa. And then, long story short, my first year at Tampa, went through the fall, missed playing sports, just being a three-sport athlete all my life, just really missed the team aspect. And so I tried walking onto the basketball team at Tampa and kind of got shut down. The reality hits when you're 5'8",
Yeah.
and it's tough to play. Especially collegiate basketball, and height kind of matters a lot. And so I was like, oh, like what, like I'm gonna walk onto the track team then. Like obviously I ran, and yeah, I walked onto the team. I ended up doing a 200-meter time trial to make the team, which is also a really ironic story. So, pretty much at Tampa, since we don't have a track conference, we only have cross country. Every single spring, the sprinters do a time trial. And because I'm like more of an 800 guy, most of the guys that run the 800 also did cross country. So I was going to pretty much be doing the time trial by myself. So then I go up to the coach and I'm like, oh, like, is the time trial just to like see my fitness, or is it like really to make the team? Just because I don't know how some programs are. He was like, no, like this is to make the team, and I think the standard was like 204. And that time my PR was only 158. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be tough. I haven't ran in 7 or 8 months. Just been pretty much playing basketball and stuff, especially in the fall. I was like, all right, so then maybe I'll just do the 400 and just like, at least so I can race the sprinters and make it more of a race feel. And I was like, well, and then and I think the standard for that was like 53 low, 52 mid, maybe, to make that. And then I was like, oh, like, is anyone doing the 200? And then he was like, yeah, like everyone's pretty much doing the 200, just because it's not the easiest sprint event, but it's just not long enough to where people want to do the 400, and obviously the 100 is just a little too quick. And he's like, yeah, like most of them are doing the 200. And I was like, oh, like I'll just do the 200 then. And my coach kind of was just like if you want to, like whatever you think's going to be the best to make the team. Yeah, he's like, if that's what you think your best shot at making a team is. I was like, oh yeah, like I know I'm fast, like I think I'll be good. And this is with no speed work, nothing. Pretty much ended up doing the 200 and ended up winning the time trial, beat all the sprinters.
There you go.
And I ran hand timed, of course, but I want to say it was like 22.8, like 22 high, I want to say I ran. Beat all the sprinters, ended up making the team. And then as soon as that was done, I pretty much jumped back up in mileage, or not really, but I just pretty much jumped back with all the distance guys and was just, doing all the cross country stuff and, preparing for the 800. And so I made the team. We ran in either 1 or 2 races that spring and I ended up running 156, so a little PR. And then we got sent home from COVID. So then, that was kind of my first glimpse of, there's still a lot of ability left in me, clearly. I ran a personal best off of just like a month of actually running and actually taking it serious. And so we get sent home. I pretty much do the whole, like, I'm going all in on cross country. That's like the team aspect of it. And I'm a huge proponent of that. And that's kind of what really gave me the higher mileage of an 800 runner, just because I felt like to make the cross country team, I had to run. And so, I started upping my mileage every year after year. And by my senior year at Tampa, I ended up being the number one cross country guy with, obviously competing in the 800.
What'd your mileage get up to?
Yeah, so I really wanted to be cautious of it just because of injuries and everything. So I want to say that freshman year, I was probably around 40 to 45. And then it was pretty much just like 5 miles every single year was going up, like 5 or 10, and just trying to be really consistent with it. So then by the time my senior year at Tampa, I was probably running like 60 as the high end. And yeah, I mean, I think that was, and from there, obviously 60 miles for an 800 runners, pretty high for standards. But like just having the background of like going all in on cross country is where that came from. And I think, a lot of people, ask me what's my mileage like, and it's such a relative thing for me because I was trying to go all in on cross country, whereas, a lot of the top 800 runners in the country right now, Donovan Brazier, Bryce Hoppel, they're only probably running, 30 to 40. And so it really varies on that sense, but like just having that cross country background and just like really having that other side of strength growth going through like, an 8K, I think that's really, for me, helped me with like how I run the 800, just having the strength side of things and being able to, have the kick with 100 meters to go. And I think that's really kind of all where it stemmed from.
Are you still kind of sitting in that pocket around 60 miles, or have you brought it down, up the intensity a little bit?
I've actually increased it. Now I'm pretty much, since being at Virginia, I'm pretty much in the 65 to 70 range. I usually do like at 65.
Might have lost you again. I don't know if you can hear me. Still there? I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen on my end, so maybe refresh again.
All right, can you hear me?
If you can still hear me, type in that chat and let me know.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Got you back.
I think it's my connection. There's no connection in Charlottesville whatsoever.
Yeah, all good.
So going back, I do a few weeks at 70, and then I cut down to 65, and pretty much it just consists of like whether I double one extra time or not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good range for me. I mean, I'm pretty consistent at it. I've been doing it for 2 years now, so I think, I won't go anywhere higher than that. Just being an 800 runner, not really worth it. And and I just think, it's such a relative thing, but like for me, I think the distance strength is so much. And I think the cross country build up is so useful for, middle distance runners, just because it kind of gives them that other sense of pain that you don't really get on the track, not the lactic pain, but like the mental strength of, fighting through a tempo or doing something like that.
So you mentioned that you were already pretty high mileage coming after Tampa. Were there any like key differences when you went to Virginia that allowed you to really drop off that time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was the training partners. I think it's like at Tampa, I was doing a lot of workouts by myself. It was a whole different category of training. I would say Virginia, a lot of the training's more like quality, like everything you do is for a purpose. And the training at Tampa was a lot of, so my Tampa coach was a 10K coach. So he definitely did whatever he could to help me out. Like he talked to a lot of other coaches who he knew to try to, learn the 800, because for him it was such an event he never ran.
Yeah.
And the big thing is that we thought at Tampa was make 52 feel as easy as possible, which is like the goal first lap pace. And so a lot of the workouts I was in spikes every week, and it was just like making 52 feel as easy as possible. Whereas Virginia, it's like I'm probably spiking up not as often. I'm doing strength stuff, and then I touch up and tune up on the speed. Whereas Tampa felt like that was kind of the main priority, was just speed. And not saying that doesn't work, because I know, for the other 800 runners, that's what they do. They do, speed, 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 and that's, how they're running at, a very high level as well. But for me, it just came, I guess, on the other sense of just doing the strength and then having the fine tuning of the speed, just doing 200s, doing, things like that will kind of sharpen the speed when races come around. And I just think, being in a group, especially at Virginia, I mean, when I transferred in, we had, I want to say 8 guys sub 4 in the mile, which is like, pretty unheard of for a collegiate team. And, when I came here, we had a 2-time All-American in 800, Connor Murphy. Definitely one of the big reasons I came here. And it was just really nice to, not be leading every workout or doing a workout by myself. It was like, if we have a hard rep and, you're pretty much running all out for 300 meters, it was nice to like sit behind someone and just kind of get into that race feel of just follow the people in front of you and kind of fall asleep for the whole thing. And I just think surrounding myself with those guys and it just being the conversations being like, I'm trying to run 146, I'm trying to run 353 in the mile. It's like, it's a lot different than at Tampa when it was like, I'm trying to run, 147, 148, but then no offense, it's like the next guy was trying to run 154.
Right.
So I just think putting yourself in that environment that was like, to take it to the next level was what, the whole mindset shifts. It's not, let's run 147. Let's make nationals and run 145. And just like, it's a way different ball game in that sense. So I just think, leveling up to that and just always being competitive and being, a competitor all my life. It's like, I'm training with Gary Martin. It's like, I want to beat him every single race. And it's like, obviously we're teammates, off the track. It's, you would never know, but it's like, when Gary drops down and runs the 800, it's like, I can't let him beat me in my own event.
Right.
And, and obviously, Gary's a class athlete, he's pretty much taking the country by storm right now, but I'm like, I can't let him drop down and beat me in my own event. He doesn't even train for this.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's still going out and running 146. So it's like, I better be able to run under 146. Mm-hmm. And just, I think from there, it was just the conversations, just a whole different, like you said, league of its own. And, from there, I just think being in that environment is just, it was like, it's also bigger than me now. I'm competing for a conference title, competing for a championship. And, our outdoor season, ACCs, we ended up winning the conference as a whole. Like going into that, it was like, at that point, I've only ran, I'm going to say like 147 before ACCs. And like, I just remember my coach being like, you need to get top 3. And at this point, I want to say the top 3 times were like, the top 3 guys in the conference have all ran 145 already. And it's like, it's like, how am I going to race top 3? I've only ran 147. But it's like, it's not even for the time, it's for the place. And the coach was like, you need to get top 3. Like, we can win this. And obviously the 800 being one of the later races, it was like, I have to go out there and get top 3. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to have to go out and do it. And pretty much at conference, I ended up coming in 3rd. And then another personal best, I think I ran 146 low at conference. But then it was like another second off. And it was like, from that, like if I didn't place top 3, we wouldn't have won conference. We only won by a few points. So it's like, it was a lot bigger than me in that sense of, I'm doing it for my team and just like having that mindset that it's, you're not chasing times. There's times to chase times, but conference is a time you just want to get the best points you can.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that higher mileage helping out with races and especially towards the end with that kick, which I think is something that you've kind of become known for at this point. Take me back to that national championship run and going through those rounds. It seemed like every round from first round, prelims, all of it, even until the final, it was always you in last place until 150 to go and then swinging wide. What kind of ran through your mind, especially in that final, being so far back? Did you still have that confidence that, you were going to make it to the line?
Yeah. It's a really funny story because like people are like, why do you do that? Mm-hmm. And that stems from like middle school track, like that long ago. It was just like in middle school and high school, like I said, like I was all in on basketball. I couldn't really tell you much about track. And it was just like, for me, like my whole thought process was coach can't get mad at you if you win the race. And so I was like, let me do the least amount of effort to win the race. So like even in middle school, I would sit and kick on every single person. So I've always had it in me, did it during high school, did it during middle school. And like, my high school coaches know that, but obviously, now kind of being on the circuit now, it's like people are like, how do you do that? Why do you do that? Like, it's just not a good way of running. But it's like, I've been doing that for the last 10 years. That type of style of running.
If it's working, right?
if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, though, it doesn't look good. But I think the big thing for me during that whole postseason run was just confidence. I mean, I felt after conference and just like, getting third and then regionals a week or two later, running another second faster, it was just like, I pretty much felt like I was like unstoppable on that sense of my kick. Like I knew I just trusted it so much that like no one in the field had this fast of a turnover as me in the last 100 meters. And so it was pretty much just like building the confidence on that sense. But it's almost like a switch. I break the race up into two, and it's, I want to get the 700 meters and know I have one more gear and know that I'm not going in the opposite direction. And, from regionals, pretty much the same thing, just had to do what I had to do to make through the rounds. Place top 2, top 3, whatever it needed to be done. And then during the final, obviously you're going against the top 9 athletes in the country in college, and you can only go out the first 400 so fast. It's obviously we're competing at a high level, but it's, I'm still going through in 25 for my first 200, and I'm in dead last, and it's like no one's going through in 49 in these races. We're not in the Diamond League yet. So it's like I'm comfortable with going out in 25 and then, having pretty much even splitting the first lap essentially. So then by 400 meters, I'm in the group. I'm not too lactic, didn't exert that much of that fast twitch in that first 200 meters to really get me tired. And, just pretty much was just waiting. And like, got to, 650 meters, 700 meters. And it was just like, all right, like now's the time to swing wide and just, see the line. And that was the big thing my coach was just saying, if you see the finish line in front of you with 100 meters to go, you're going to be okay. And, sometimes that takes lane 4 or lane 3, but, it's, just swung wide and kind of just gave it all I had. And it's, going back and watching the video and seeing Sam Whitmarsh, navigating through everyone and me just having the whole straight lane in front of me, just even though it was lane 4, it's really, cool to see that there were such two different ways of racing the 800, front leading versus kind of the sit and kick, especially at this level. And, but yeah, it was like 100 meters to go, and I was like, I knew I was gonna place top 3. And then it was like, 50 meters to go, and it's like, oh crap, I've passed 5 people. There's only 2 or 3 more people in front of me. And, then it's like 20 meters to go, and it's like, wow, I'm in second place now. And then, it's just, looking and really going through, obviously being at Hayward Field for the first time, the crowd's going crazy. Everyone loves a spectator kick, so it's everyone's on their feet. Then from there with 20 meters to go, it's just like run through the line, don't stop. Was able to, stay in the front and not, kick. And I think it's crucial to know where your kind of sweet spot is. And I know pretty much from 100 to 120, I could run through the line fully without the last, 10 meters or so getting, start going lactic and having someone else kind of have that extra gear. And so it's really, you just really have to be patient in the sense of when you go, because if you go at 200 meters, you might not make it through the line. And, just timing it perfectly to, have enough track to get to the front, because sometimes there'd be races where I come in second or third, and it's like, I would have won if this race was 10 more meters.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's definitely a nerve-wracking thing to watch, but it's, I'm so confident in, the kick and just having that extra gear that, it's coming down with 100 meters to go. It's pretty much like no one's going to be able to, stop me. Just I have to time it right to where I don't run out of track to
Right.
get to the front.
So postseason, right after that race, you go to your first Olympic trials, eventually sign with Nike. What was that process like? And, were there any other brands courting you, and why Nike?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, pretty much what my coach and I were saying was that the trials was like house money.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I was still in college. The whole priority was NCAAs. Went to NCAAs, took care of business, you know, and then it was like, all right, like let's have a meeting, let's regroup, let's figure out the plans. Obviously, 144 is kind of a different league of its own now, and pretty much we came up with a plan that for the month that I actually stayed out in Oregon for the month until the trials. That the plan was to not focus on agents or brands or talking to anyone, and just focusing on running the trials, resetting, and it's actually kind of funny because I kind of I felt like Cooper Lukenhaus had a very similar thing to me as well. Just so him, making the team, but then it's like and obviously turning pro with Nike and stuff. But it's like he had to do he just ran one of the best 800 races ever, for an American. But it's like he was such on a high where it's like you have to take a step back and focus on what's in front of you, and that's Tokyo for him. And so I think that was a very similar thing for me, where it was like the whole if I was going to go pro is not going away. The time's there. I obviously won the title, and so it was like let's take care of business, because if I make the team, you're in a whole different ballgame now. Now you're an Olympian. Now you're gonna have a lot more stuff available for you, a lot more options. And so it was just like, let's make the team, and that's that was kind of the main focus. Pretty much took a reset, went back to the basics. I was with a few other Virginia guys out in Oregon still, and just went back to training for the 2 or 3 weeks we were out there. Workouts, just kind of resetting the body, just obviously trying to keep riding the high into the trials, just with the confidence. But it's you need to take a step back and being like this is what's in front of me, kind of thing. And yeah, so then I go through the trials, end up being making the final, placing 6, and then it was like, all right, now what are the options? Is it going pro? Is it coming back? And I actually almost went back to school first. So my master's program at Virginia is a 2-year program. So either way, I was going to be in Virginia this previous year. But then I was trying to figure out the eligibility. And because Tampa never had indoor, I had all my indoor. And then I also had cross. And then because of COVID, I also had the cross country. So I knew I had cross country and indoor, but then we weren't sure about the outdoor. And from there, it was just trying to figure out if I'm going to have outdoor or not. And Coach and I kind of came up with a plan that if I had outdoor, I was going to go back to Virginia, run the NCAA one more year, and maybe look at the NIL. Obviously that was kind of getting big last year, and doing the whole NIL route. But turns out didn't end up having an outdoor eligibility. So then the plan was obviously outdoor is kind of the big season. Not that no one cares about indoor, but there's a lot more hype around the outdoor season. And the plan was if I didn't have outdoor, I was just going to turn pro. And so then I get the results back, no outdoor. So then it's like, all right, the plan's to go pro. And then it was kind of going through the whole college recruiting process again, trying to pick an agent and talk to a lot of people, and just wanted to keep that list definitely a little narrow. But obviously you have to weigh your options. And ended up going with one of my coach had a really good friend who's the agent for a lot of the pole vaulters and throwers, which kind of seems a little which seems very out of the ordinary. But her name's Karen Locke, and she's been a huge help. One of the best decisions was going with her. So well connected, knows everyone. I mean, she has Katie Moon, Joe Kovacs. She is has very high level names, and just being. And the thing that my thought process was I didn't want to go to some of the bigger names on that sense because I just didn't want to be another 800 athlete or another person that's just on their list. I know a lot of these agents have, they have 3 of the top 1,500 meter runners in the country, and it's like, well, if you have the 3 of the best, how are you going to get all 3 into a race?
Right.
And obviously,
it's conflict of interest as well. Yeah.
And obviously, times speak volume. If you're fast, you're going to get in either way. But my thought process was, she can leverage these people for me, and me being the first, pretty much the only distance runner, or runner, honestly, not thrower or anything. It was like she has a lot of options of getting me in the races. She can leverage, Katie Moon, Joe Kovacs, all these, elite athletes who are in diamond leagues and stuff like that to get in the races. And, I just really had a good connection with her, and, I ended up being like, this is who I want to go with. So I ended up signing with Karen, and, she's been the best. It's been a really, really good, really great with her. And then it was like, all right, now let's figure out who I want to sign with now, the brand side of things. So she pretty much asked me, she was like, who are you interested in? That's kind of the first things first. And obviously, as any new person in the circuit, it was just like Nike, Adidas, On, like just naming all the big ones. But then it was like, all right, let's take a step back. On realistically has no 800 meter runners. Why would you go to On? And then it's, all right, you're right. All right, so then we have Nike, Brooks. Obviously, Brooks has an amazing program right now. So it's Nike, Brooks, Adidas, realistically. And, but obviously, Adidas has Bryce Hoppel. Adidas has Hobbs Kessler, has Josh Hoey now. He's running unbelievable in the last few years.
Yes.
So it was like, wow, like, is Adidas the right move? Do I want to be out? Do I want to, join a team with a few other really, really good Adidas runners? And obviously Brooks, Brandon Miller, their program's great. Danny Mackey's a great guy. And pretty much being always a Nike school, Tampa was a Nike school, Virginia was a Nike school. Coach Vin Lanana, huge Nike guy. Pretty much, I've always worn Nike. So it was like, why wouldn't I go with Nike? And obviously kind of Nike dominates the whole brands of pretty much running, with their shoes are the best in the game.
Yeah.
Everyone's wearing Next Percents, everyone's wearing Dragonflies. It's kind of a thing I've always been used to. Obviously, I've always worn Nike, so it's, why kind of switch it up. And pretty much, Brooks, and then I ended up kind of cutting it to Brooks and Nike. Kind of was just like, obviously financials were kind of whatever deal, but it was just like they were very similar to each other. So then I was like, what brand do I want to go with? And, if I went with Brooks, I was going to have to move out to Seattle. And I just think, being an East Coast boy pretty much all my life, it was kind of just, I don't know if I wanted to go all the way out to Seattle and everything. I know the team's great. I'm sure I would have loved it. It seems like everyone on that team is great. Isaiah Harris, now I'm good friends with all these guys. Definitely, I'm sure it would have been a perfect fit, but I would ended up just kind of just being like, I think Nike's, I want to be with the best brand in the world. And so I ended up signing with Nike. And then, now there's not many 800 meter groups for Nike. So I'm actually still training at Virginia with Vin and, Gary and all those guys. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Just got done the first, full year, and, still at Virginia, still in Charlottesville, and training under Coach Vin, and kind of think of. And I was at the point where if it's not broke, don't fix it. The training works. Clearly, he's taking me to a whole new level, and I was like, why switch up the training? Why do it if I don't need to?
Can you shed some light on? It seems to me, if there's another sport, then I'm not aware of it, but it seems to me that running seems to be the only sport where the contracts and financials of the athletes are not publicly available for any reason. And that's kind of changed a little bit with Grand Slam track, but as we know, the state of that right now, who knows if that will continue. But that was one of the things that I really liked about Grand Slam was that when you're watching it, you know what's at stake.
Hmm.
Whereas you're watching these, there's a little bit more publicity around the Diamond League purses and things like that. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, why are these contracts so kept under wraps? And is that something that, affects your contract negotiations because you don't know what other guys are publicly making?
I think it definitely does affect the negotiations in that sense. Um, I don't know. I think there's like,
I
I
guess, do
think
you
that
know of the
people,
reason behind it? Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
at a
it's,
loss for it. Like, I don't
yeah,
understand.
I have no idea what the reasons for it. I just think because it's so, like, personable, I guess if that's the right word.
Yeah,
Like, everyone is so different, and, like, brands kind of all have their own different values. So it's just kind of like the endorsements, I guess, are just so different in that sense. I definitely think that the agents have a very good idea of how much people are getting paid, just kind of being like on their end, but I don't think
right.
it's obviously public to even like the athletes, like on our side. Like I couldn't tell you how much any of them are making. But I think the agents have a good idea, so from there they can kind of leverage that
Hmm.
sense.
So when they
But
tell you it's a
it's
good deal, it's you're
yeah,
relying on
yeah.
them.
Yeah, it's definitely a really big trust thing. And the thing is, it's almost like obviously agents make a cut, so the more money you make, the more money they're going to make. So I think they
Right, they're
know
incentivized.
they so they're also incentivized in that sense. So I know they're not going to do anything to kind of screw you over essentially. But it's yeah, it's a really niche thing I would say. You know how the running world is pretty much like you said the only sport that does it, and I have. There's honestly, there's not one reason that comes to mind on why that is. I don't know
I
if
was
it's
just
gonna
curious,
change.
is it like
Yeah,
it's not written into anybody's contract or anything, like a non-disclosure in any way like that
I
that you
don't think
know of?
so. I don't think so. It's like I definitely think like yeah. I mean, I definitely like yeah. I just think it's kind of like just like a hidden rule that like everyone kind of just like follows in the
That's
running world.
interesting.
It's a really weird because it's even like kind of being on the circuit. It's just not even something that like we bring up with each other.
Yeah, when
It's
we
kind of
talk.
just like it's just everyone kind of just like that's just something that no one asks each other. It's just like obviously like I like when I'm talking to like my home friends who know nothing about running. It's like no big deal, but it's like in the
Yeah,
running world, it's very everyone kind of is to themselves, especially on like in that sense. But it's I think just the endorsements and stuff that athletes are now getting is also adding to it all. I just think it's especially with now NIL and how everything is. It's like there's so much more than just the brand. You can get a lot of smaller
yeah,
things. Protein stuff, and I just think all that stuff kind of adds up onto it. But yeah, honestly, don't have any reason for being able to give you a little insight on why it's like that.
yeah. That's all right. The other thing you brought up that I thought I wanted to talk to you about, um, Cooper House obviously just took the world by storm. But I hate to say, I don't ever want to discredit anything that a high schooler just did because obviously it was shocking. But if that
Yeah,
happened 3 years ago, I think it would have literally broke the sport.
yeah,
And the fact that it happened last year, I think everyone was like, wow. And then it was out of the news cycle in a week because of where the state of running is today. It's almost like something like that is commonplace, which I hate that we're getting to that point because it
yeah.
really is amazing what just happened. Um, with that, though, there's been not necessarily specifically Cooper House, but more of in a general sense, especially when we
Hmm.
had that race. Forget if it was last year or this year, but there was one. It was somewhere in Europe, and there was like four guys that ran 141. I don't know if
Hmm.
you know the one that I'm talking about, but
Yeah. It was one of the
uh,
diamond leagues.
yeah, and there started to be the discussion of like what is happening. Is this, doping questions started
Hmm.
getting raised? Do you think everything is above board, especially in the 800 when we haven't had really an advancement in 15 years or something like that? And then all of a sudden now these guys are all breaking it at once. What do you kind of attribute that to?
I mean, I definitely do think at least from my understanding, I think in the last few years, I think the technology is really, up their game. Not even on the sense of brands and shoes, just on the sense of resources that we're, access to have. Now there's bicarb.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff like that I think definitely helps. There's a lot of supplements that are, that help with the lactic acid and stuff like that. And I think, and I just think people leveraging that, I think the 800 is the perfect event for it, to where you are literally running 90% for, 95% for the entire 2 laps of your race. And I think, the mile is a little bit, obviously they're running so fast in a mile now that it's pretty much the same pace, but it's, the 800 is such a true event that has so much lactic that goes into it, but also you also need the strength to run 2 laps. And I just think it's really, especially for the 800, but it's funny though, because as fast as everyone's getting, the world record is still there. The world record still hasn't gone down. So I just think, it just kind of just shows that obviously the level is getting unbelievable. It takes, we had 2 guys that made the Olympic team not even make, the world team, especially in the 1500. Like, it's just the running world is going bonkers right now. But it's, I just think the resources are the biggest thing. I just think the supplements, the recovery, everyone is, I think there's a new cycle of training that it's not so much of I need to hammer every single workout to run fast. There is a little bit of a science between it on how to, take it to the next level. I mean, it's, Donovan Brazier had, one of the greatest comebacks probably in the sport, being able to take 3 years off and, run a PR and, make the team. And I just think the resources and just everything is definitely the thing to thank in it. Yeah. And I just think it gets exploited specifically in the 800 just because it pretty much hits every single base of running, the aerobic and the lactic side of things. And so, yeah, I just think that's been definitely the biggest thing. I mean, it's, and kind of going with what you're saying with like, Cooper, and it's like, Quincy, it's like all these guys in high school are, high school, these kids are running times that professionals are trying to run. It's a whole new, ball game where high schoolers are running 146 now. I want to say like top 20 in the country was like sub 149.
Yeah, which
and
is
it's like it's like when I was in high school, if you break 150, you're going to whatever school you want to go to.
Yeah.
And it's just, I definitely think it's the technology and, the shoes, the recovery, you're able to go through rounds and, recover faster. I mean, Cooper was like, pretty much, I'm going to say a tenth of a second off of his PR in the semifinal, and then comes back to run 3 seconds faster in the final. And it's like, holy crap. Like, is it really going to take 42 to make teams now, especially in the 800? It's, it's really, especially in the United States, it's like, a different level. And obviously Cooper only being 16, he has at least probably 3 Olympic cycles that he's going to be.
Yeah.
We're still,
4, which is outrageous for a track guy.
Yeah. And he's, in 10 years, he's still going to be pretty much younger than Bryce Hoppel.
Yeah.
and so it's like, these are, the new norms. And then especially you have these high schoolers now that are running faster, and it's like, they're probably only touching a little bit of what their true potential is. Obviously high school coaches are doing great, but it's, college coaches really know what they're doing. And then on top of that, the colleges will have all the resources for them, the recovery, the massages, the ice baths, all that stuff that they probably don't get access to in high school. So I just think it's really going to keep getting better and better every single year. And it's just, now it's, having 1 year in the circuit, it's like, I got to keep moving up as well. I got to take advantage of the stuff I have access to, the massages, the bicarb, stuff like that to help. You got to run 142 now to be, to make diamond leagues, to really get on the circuit. So it's going to be really exciting next few years of track, because it's just, everyone is I mean, the United States is just loaded. It's just going to be so exciting for the next few years and years to
So
come.
yeah. So over the next Olympic cycle, obviously we just had one. Um, you know, before the next Olympics and into the next Olympics, do you have any concrete goals that you kind of have in your head?
Yeah, there's definitely, obviously everyone has their own goals, and I just think the good thing about myself and just like how I run, I try not to look at it from like a time standpoint. I just think, like going into the trials, the main goal is make the team, whether it takes 141 or if it takes 145. And obviously it's not going to take 145, but like I think
It
having the
might take
mindset of just
141 the way we're going.
yeah. If I'm nervous for the next one.
Yeah.
And but I just think the whole shift of not running for time but running for to make a team, I think just goes such a long way. And when I'm talking to high school athletes, people get so caught up on, I'm trying to break 16 minutes in the 5K, I'm trying to break 17 minutes, I'm trying to break 2 minutes, and it's just like, for me, the whole thing is like, if you go out there and win every race, you're gonna run fast, and like that's what I'm such a true believer of. And I think a lot of people are like, even last year with my season, it was like, oh, how did he drop 5 seconds in 2 years, from the transferring? And like, and it's funny, like looking on like Let's Run and seeing what people are saying, it's just like, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you really look at the timeline, it was like, I only ran, 148 going to Virginia. And so I was only in, all the heats I was in were 148 to 150 range. And then it was like, as the season went on, especially, getting the postseason of outdoor, it's like, you don't run into a big race until conference, pretty much, at least getting into a faster heat than what you're prescribed. And it's like, ACCs was like, all right, I'm running against guys that run 145. Like I was saying, like, let's just get top three. And then I was like, oh man, I ran 146. And then it's like, then the next, 2 weeks later, then it's regionals. And it's like, all right, now you're going against the top 48 people on the East Coast. And obviously, you have plenty more 145 guys. And then from there, it was like, then I ran 145, and it was like, wow, like, this is the true potential, just because I went out there and was able to put myself in a better race with better people, and I ended up running faster. It's like, Cooper is the same way. It's Cooper, racing high school kids. He was just pretty much doing you can only solo a race and run so fast.
Right.
And then, like, when Cooper got to, the trials, he was racing 142 guys, 143 guys. And it's like, the way he was able to level up and do that just kind of shows that it just depends. The race is what's the most important. And I think, obviously the goal is to make, the world teams, the Olympic teams. And I think that's kind of the eyes for 2028. I mean, I think the long-term goal is to make that team and really get to represent, USA, and just make that team. And obviously there'll be smaller goals along the way, but I think the long-term goals, I want to make my first world team. I think it's going to be an incredible honor, and it's just just going to be, that's the name of the sport. It's
Yeah.
that's what you work for. It's obviously you want to run fast, and that that comes with the individual goals during the season, but the main goal is to make that team. And that's pretty much everyone's goal on the pro circuit. It's you want to represent the country, and you want to travel the world, and be one of the three people that make the team.
Yeah. Well, wrapping up here, you've already had, such an incredibly unique story that I think a lot of people can really relate to, because, these Cooper Lukenhouse, as amazing as he is, like, he's not relatable for 99% of people.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in any negative way towards him. It's like, he's so good that he's unrelatable to a lot of high school, a lot of collegians. And again, not to knock you, but it's not like you came out running 148 out of high school, which I think makes you more relatable in the fact that guys can see the progression that, if you're going to come out of high school running a 158, you have to have if you want to get where you want to go. So knowing that you've had that story and that you've already made that impact on people in the sport, especially the younger guys coming up now. What do you want ultimately your legacy to be once you, hopefully a long time from now, retire from the sport and kind of leave it all behind?
Yeah, I think, the big piece of advice is just don't, as cliche as it is, it's really like don't give up. It's people get so caught up on a lot of the wrong things in high school just because they're looking up to these people that are, running the best in the country for high school. And it's just everyone's story is different. It's everyone has different priorities. Everyone are 2, 3 sport athletes where they're in high school, they're enjoying their experience. They do track just as a side thing, but they do end up falling in love with it by their junior and senior year. If you put in the work, you're going to see the outcomes. And I think people just running is such a frustrating sport because it's you versus you. It's you versus, and you can control 75% of the outcome just based on how your lifestyle is and what you're doing. And it's just kids need to stop with the whole running for time. I need to be, trying to run XX. It's just like their goal should be to compete for their team and try to win a state championship for their team. That means so much more than an individual title. You'll never even know. And obviously my individual title was great, but winning ACCs as a team for the first time in a lot of years was probably one of the greatest feelings because you're around the entire men's track and field team, just everyone celebrating. And it's just, that environment was just something that was I was wow, this is what it's all about, really. And these top high schoolers, obviously they're kind of in a league of their own, but if you're not, it's, you're competing, you're trying to help out the top guy, bring you guys a state championship. It's, everyone has to do their part in these teams, and even though it's an individual sport, it's still a team sport at the end of the day. You still can compete for a state championship. And I just think everyone's story is different, and I just think you need to, honestly, as cliche as it is, just don't give up. There's different ways to train. It's different for everyone. Clearly, the training worked at Tampa. I was able to drop 10 seconds based on that training. But then, you go to another school, and I do a whole different resume of training, and I was able to drop 5 more seconds. Obviously, it's comparative to the level it is at from 148 to 144. But it's different training for everyone, and I just think kids need to get into the right mindset that it's okay to have a bad race. I think people get really down, but there's still another race. If I told you that my entire first year at Virginia was rainbows and sunshines, you would be wrong. It was indoor ACCs. I didn't even make the final for conference. And then it's, fast forward 5 months, and they ended up winning NCAAs. And I couldn't even make the final during indoors. So it's, everyone's story is so different. And I just think it's, as cliche as it is, it's just, don't give up. And, you'll find the right spot for you. And if it's, running in college or whatnot, there's a school for everyone. There's a school, especially for running. You can find a school if you want to make it work.
Love that answer. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been an episode I've wanted to have since I started this. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and I think a lot of people will really benefit from it. So
yeah, appreciate it, Ben. Sorry for all the internet issues that we had along the way.
All good, dude. Yeah.
Appreciate
so
it, Ben.
Best of luck over the next few years, and I'll be watching, as I'm sure a lot of America will be. So
yep, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.